right, welcome to AI FISEC today, where we're embarking on a thrilling journey into the intersection of artificial intelligence and the physical security industry. Super excited for our guest today, Jody Russell. He is a senior sales engineer at Ambient and a past colleague of mine. And welcome, Jody. How are you, my friend?
Man, I am great, and thank you so much, Don, for bringing me on. This is such a great experience and awesome idea on your part. We need voices in this industry. We need young voices that are thinking a little more progressively in terms of technology. And one of the best ways to get that exposure out there is through podcasts like this, where you can really kind of explore other people's perspectives. So I really appreciate the fact that you're doing this, and look forward to many, many, many more.
Awesome. And then you said it best, right? Everyone's got a perspective that's worth hearing about, especially in the space, and
Yeah.
especially for people like yourself that I know are equivalent AI enthusiasts. So super excited to hear about more of this. So we have the podcast episode. The title we'll get into a bit, but Jody, why don't you give the audience a bit about your background? Just tell them a little bit more about yourself and your work history and industry, so forth.
Sure. So I've been in the physical security space for just over 20 years. I started, as we like to say back in the day, I started as a CPA, which has nothing to do with math or dollars or anything, but everything to do with being a cable pulling a-hole. So that's what my boss called me for 2 years. All I did was pull cable, the big yellow banana cable, right? That you would put for access control back in the day when they still put them on 1,000-foot reels or spools. So did that for many years, pulling cable, installing access control, installing video surveillance technology. Kind of moved up the ranks over my time there on the reseller side. Eventually got to a point where I was managing a security division, which then I started to interact a lot more with sales reps from our manufacturers for the products that we were installing. Got to build some relationships and kind of see how that world was. And then actually ran into Dean Draco and a couple of guys from Eagle Eye Networks at a trade show. And just when I saw the technology, I thought, man, this is, it was a dream of mine many years ago when the first iPhone came out. I thought, this iPhone, you're going to have security on it at some point. Somebody's going to do this. And I wanted to do it, but I lacked the ability to execute at that time. And here was Dean, and he was doing it. And so then as soon as I had the opportunity to put on that Eagle Eye shirt, I did, and never looked back. And so now I've been on the manufacturing side for many years, learning a lot about the technology itself and being able to leverage my past experience as a systems installer and designer and salesperson to be able to really kind of articulate the technology through the lens of the guy that has to go and install it, or through the lens of the person that has to sit down and use it. And that's really been extremely beneficial for me throughout my career.
Awesome. Thanks for that.
Mhm.
So as we usually do on the podcast, give us one fun fact about Jody that you'd like the audience to know about you.
Yeah, I love this part of it. So I was once shot in the face by a Secret Service agent with wasp spray. And the reason it's funny is because Secret Service agents, they're, you would think, extremely well trained in how to handle a deadly weapon in their hands. And I was working on a project that was it was in Austin, Texas, and we were clearing out photoelectric beams from the woods around Lady Bird Johnson's house. And I don't know how much of this is top secret, so I hope I don't get us in trouble. It's many years ago. I'm sure we're fine now. So we're clearing out these woods and we're pulling out these photoelectric beams. And of course, there's wasps. We're in Texas. It's the summer, and everywhere you go on this property, you have to have a Secret Service agent as an escort. So he's got the wasp spray. I pull out some hardware. Wasps go everywhere. He panics and just starts spraying them, and I'm in the line of fire. And I take it all in the face. I'm not even sure if we hit any of the wasps, but he definitely got me in the face. So I have the claim now that I've been shot in the face by a Secret Service agent. How's that?
Man, that's nuts. I not gonna lie, I was looking for a hole in your face for a second. I'm like, your face looks fine, you know. So I'm glad you started wasp spraying that. Well, I'm sure your eyes went through a slow recovery, but I'm glad you recovered, and thanks for that.
Just
So
anybody out
yeah,
there that's
yeah, yeah,
anybody out there that's going to be brave around the
yeah,
Secret Service agent,
yeah.
just know that they are very quick on the trigger. So be careful.
Probably for good reason,
Yeah,
especially if they're around a president.
yeah.
Okay, awesome, man. Well, let's go into the topic. So, the topic that we have for today is understanding AI privacy and addressing data overload challenges. Um, Super interesting to talk about this and hear what your thoughts are. Jody, why don't you kick us off?
Extremely heady topic, right? And it's a two-parter. They definitely are intertwined in a way, but I think I'm going to probably spend more time with privacy because that's really it's a big thing right now. Um, and I do need to preface this by saying that I'm not by any means a privacy law expert. Uh, I can speak specifically towards privacy as it affects video surveillance technology with AI, mostly in the realm of computer vision. Now, there's this whole other aspect of AI and privacy that needs to be considered when it comes to like your LLMs and your generative AIs and some of the AI that people are now starting to implement in public spaces. That's kind of a different conversation that I'm going to probably defer to an actual expert for you. So maybe in season 2 or 3 of this episode of this podcast, you can get an actual AI privacy law expert. However, for me, I've spent a lot of time in the industry and privacy, whether we were talking about AI or just plain old physical security, privacy's always been a thing, especially in video surveillance. The moment you put a camera up on a wall and people realize that it's there, they want to know who's watching, what are they watching, and what are they recording, and how long are they keeping that recording, right? And so it's always been a conversation. And now, as I've moved throughout my career into the manufacturing space, I've had more and more conversations with end users and even just friends of mine that are interested in what I do about the application of AI and how that is affecting people's privacy. And it's an interesting conversation because it's a lot more than just who's watching the video, right? And what are you doing with the data? And privacy for a long time is it's difficult for people to really explain what it is. I mean, if I asked you, Don, what is privacy? What just the first 2 words that come to your mind?
It's it's how can I say? It's my information that's protected for me. I
Right.
guess.
Yeah. So it's hard to articulate though,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And the thing is like what most people defer to is, well, it's my information about me and I have control of it. So it's about control. And then their concern is if I no longer have control over access to my personal information, who does have control and what are they doing with it? Right. Now, it's a big topic in video surveillance, computer vision, artificial intelligence, physical security, but it's actually been a big topic for certainly for Americans for a long time because we've already had this conversation when it came to our cell phones, right? And we've already kind of as collectively as consumers, we've given up our privacy when it comes to our cell phones. I mean, we're walking around with these data collection devices that are with us pretty much everywhere we go, maybe short of the bedroom and the bathroom. Your cell phone's in your hand or in your pocket, and it is collecting data nonstop. But we've just sort of been okay with that. And the reason that we've become okay with it is because of all the cool stuff that we can do with our phone, right? And so the same thing is going to eventually start to happen with video surveillance, except for the fact that you're putting video surveillance in some very sensitive areas like schools where there's children or in businesses that have proprietary information happening in real time. And you do have to be concerned about what's happening with that video data that's being collected in those situations. And so, like right now, our world, we're experiencing this sort of like big data, uh, like the big bang of the universe is happening with data, right? You have kind of this idea of Moore's law where technology is doubling every 2 years. AI being applied to the ability to collect and analyze data has now become that exponentially large growth factor that's happening, that's inducing this big bang of data. And so we really do, as a collective, have to start thinking about how do we move from the traditional reactive mode of how we handle privacy to a proactive mode of how we're going to handle privacy as this emerging technology like artificial intelligence and computer vision and the generative AIs and all the other things that are coming out around the corner. We need to have some sort of foundation in place today to make sure that we're protecting ourselves and our children in a way that is ethical tomorrow, right? So immediately you think of things like facial recognition. That's a big one. Facial recognition systems, they have the ability to really collect very personal information, my face, and then tie that personal information to other data sets out there in the wild, and then begin to create a persona of me that's decoupled from my actual physical persona, and then track what I do and who I am and what makes me me, and everywhere that I go, based off of the ability to identify just my face. Uh, but there's already a lot of concern with that, right? And there's kind of, I think, in my experience, two different teams about facial recognition. You have one group of people that are very excited about it. They see the potential for what it can do from a security standpoint. And then you have another group of people that are very, very, very turned off on it because of the implications are for privacy. If you look at what states are doing, that kind of, I believe, informs what's going to eventually happen with facial recognition. So, like California, they're generally leading the charge in things that when it comes to progressive technology and the regulation of these technologies. And many cities in California are already banning the use of facial recognition technology in body worn cameras for police officers and schools and other municipalities. And so that seems to be naturally kind of the way that the rest of the US is probably going to unfold. Another
Anyway,
thing
just
that
for clarification on that, so do you think that it's going to unfold from a state by state legislation perspective, or do you think that's going to be something like California's kind of rolling solo on that, right? They're progressive. They're doing a lot of advancements in privacy laws or regulations. Do you think that's going to go state by state, managed by the state, or do you think that's going to go in a federal direction?
I actually don't think it's going to be either. I
Mm,
think that we're going to try, right? I think that state by state is probably the more um, realistic way that happens. Generally speaking, for me as an American, I like the idea of my local government making the law, not necessarily the federal government laying down the law. But I think what the problem with it is it takes long regulatory gaps and the speed that it takes to get these laws in place and all the studies that they have to do and all the money that has to be spent. We don't have that kind of time. Like AI is, I mean, you're at the forefront leading the conversation about it. You know what's happening with AI, especially in our sector. And so, what's really going to happen, I believe, is that ethical businesses are going to build privacy first as a foundation in their AI development, and that's really the
mhm,
secret sauce to how we make this work, and do it in a way that appeases the public.
mhm,
We have to be ethical in our design and execution of AI so that it's privacy by default, so that
mhm,
it's not up to the government to come in and tell us what we can and can't do.
mhm,
We just say, look, it's just not cool, right? And we can collect. I know because I work for a computer vision company. We can collect all of the data that we need to provide really, really robust security without ever having to collect any of your personally identifiable information. And if we can do that, then why do we even need to be concerned with it, right? If somebody were to breach our technology and they were able to access the data on our customers, that data has no personally identifiable information captured in it. So it's useless in that sense. And I think that's a really important part of how we evolve the community perception about AI, especially in terms of video surveillance. So let me ask you, Don, if you if you were in a room, like somebody locks you in a room, not a jail cell, but this they lock you in a room. In your case, probably a padded room with white walls, right? But they lock you in a room, and they have a camera there in the corner of the room. You're there in that room all day long, and you're staring up at that camera. Would you rather have a human watching you, or would you rather have an AI watching you?
I would say AI, if I was being honest, mostly because the AI could, if it's machine learning, I mean, that's a whole different ball of wax. Like that to me is weak AI. But if it, if it gets to the point of, I mean, even generative does it. You could layer in things to take out bias or other thoughts. So I feel way more comfortable around AI because of the fact that the human is so unpredictable. I don't know what they're going to do with that video footage as opposed to AI, which is much more simplistic and targeted in nature for why it exists.
This is the like I wish more people, and of course, you've been spending a lot of time and a lot of your brain power in this AI space, so you kind of have a much more mature understanding of what the technology actually is and what it can do. But the general public does not have the grasp on it that you and I do. And so generally what happens is when I have these kinds of conversations with, maybe some old timer who's like, oh, this AI, and I don't want a computer watching and knowing everything I'm doing and blah, blah, blah. But video cameras have been around for a long time, and people have been putting video cameras all over the place. And a lot of times we're even blind to them now. We don't even like think about the fact that there's cameras watching this throughout New York City everywhere we go. And when you say to people, well, would you rather have a human watching you or an AI? The people that aren't informed, they generally go, well, I don't want an AI watching me. And then as you kind of explain that, what that means, they begin to sort of have your thoughts on it, which is, well, actually, humans judge. Humans, they make assumptions about things. They could be watching me and sharing, with other people just for a laugh, right? Whereas an AI, it lacks those things. It can be built in a way that all it's really doing, it's not even actually watching you, it's just identifying certain behaviors or certain activities that could be problematic, right? So like if the point of putting you in that room was to protect you, and then all of a sudden a door blows open, an AI could be sitting there watching that scene nonstop, 24/7, very vigilant, and the only thing that really matters to it is that that door opened up. It doesn't matter whether you're walking around with pants on or not. The AI does not care. It's not processing that. It's nothing, right? To that, you are literally a blob of pixels to this thing, right? And so that to me is way more appealing for me and my privacy as a human than having the idea that actual Big Brother, because Big Brother is a person, not a machine. Now you could use a machine for nefarious means, and that's the fear with the Big Brother idea.
Mhm.
But if you go back and you watch the old movies from the 50s and 60s, Big Brother was actual people that were watching this stuff, and that's creepy to me. That's way more
Mhm.
creepy than an AI. But there is something that we have to consider when we think about what privacy really is, and we started talking about it's my ability to control my personal information. And what does that mean? Well, my personal information is me, right? And if I can control my personal information, then I can sort of I can create who I
Mhm.
am. I can control the others' perceptions of me because they
Mhm.
don't know my internet search history, or they don't know what I do when I'm in a room by myself. They don't know all the funny faces I make in the mirror before I put my work suit on and go to work in the morning, right?
Mhm.
And if they did know, then their perception of me would change. But really, what we have to be concerned with is not necessarily the control of that data, but the effect that it has on the actual human experience, right?
Mhm.
What is happening with our children if they live in a world where everything's being watched all the time, and they are changing their behavior based on the fact that they know that they're being watched, right?
Mhm.
Human beings looking at a camera, that is always going to have a greater impact, in my opinion, than the fact that an AI may be looking at a camera. And I say that because we don't really care the fact that Google or Facebook or whoever, me, I don't want to get anybody in trouble or get myself in trouble. whoever it is that's listening to us on the phones, they're doing it with the intention of providing us better services. And so for us, it's like, okay, well, that's a good trade-off. I like the idea that when I jump onto Google or something that I've got the information I need right away. Kids are growing up in that world and they're okay with it. But the moment that you say, well, my boss is listening to every phone call or reading every email, that becomes creepy, right? So kind of talked around privacy a lot. I do want to hit on the data thing because I think it's a really interesting
Yeah,
thought.
data overload. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So we've talked about AI and this ability to make video surveillance, and I'm speaking specifically towards video surveillance technologies. But the advent of AI or the application of AI in that space has made the ability to collect data just crazy, right? And the fact that we're selling I think we sold more cameras last year. When I say we, I mean collectively in the industry. We sold more cameras last year or over the past 2 years than were actually installed in the world, right? So the amount of camera data being generated is just off the charts. And I personally believe we're running up against a sort of Armageddon scenario when it comes to what are we doing with all this data. We have to transmit it, we have to store it, we have to access it, we have to wade through it all. And this is where AI really comes into play and can be a very important factor for us. So we have to think about things like our data centers, right? How are we going to maintain sustainability with all these data centers all over the place? And the cost to transmit data and the cost to store data is going to continue to rise. And so we as consumers have to figure out ways that we can limit the actual amount of data that we're creating and that we're storing. It's kind of like that hoarder that keeps buying stuff and sticking it in their house, and they're running out of space and they just keep buying more stuff. We just keep adding more cameras, we keep recording
Mm.
more video. And then as an industry, we have this idea that we have to have 30, 60, 90 days of storage. And I don't think very many people have actually kind of like sat back and looked at and said, why do we have to have 90 days of storage?
Mhm.
And for you and I as security practitioners, we go, oh, well, it's easy. It's because risk, right? You'd rather have it than not have it.
Like CYA. Yeah.
Yeah, CYA, exactly. And if something were to happen and you didn't know and you don't have the video, you're going to be in trouble. Well, we're moving past all that with the application of computer vision intelligence. Only
Yeah.
actionable data is what we need to be collecting. So what I would encourage everyone, whether you're a manufacturer or you're a consumer, you've got to really start looking at either how your products are managing data, and the amount of data that your products are storing. And then on the consumer side, why are we storing all this data? What is our operations, or what are our processes that require us to keep all this? And what's the cost going to be, right? Because I think that we're very quickly with technology getting to a point where there's no reason to have 30, 60, 90, 120 days of video storage. Maybe
You
in
just
some
want usable video,
exactly
right?
actionable
Yeah.
data,
Yeah.
actionable data. And in some businesses, or regulatory means or whatever, you might find that you still have to store data for some reason. But going back to privacy, where do you store that data? Because that has a very big implication on privacy. How do you transmit that data to wherever you're storing it? Because there's a vulnerability in privacy right there. And so there's a lot of things that we need to think about, like edge storage versus cloud storage, or where are we applying the AI so that we're only transmitting the actionable data to cloud storage, and we're keeping the unactionable data on site so that we meet our retention requirements, et cetera. So there's a lot of things that we can do as security practitioners to consult our customers on the best practices for this stuff. But the main point of what I want to put out there is that we're thinking about it. We're actually like, wait a minute, why am I recording all this video? I can have a 30-second clip that is minimal amount of data that shows the crime occurring. That's all I really need. That's the only thing that's going to be submitted in court, or that's the only thing I'm going to use for forensic investigations. All that other stuff goes away. That's my
Yeah.
rant.
No, that's a great rant, and I really enjoyed some of this stuff. Yeah, because I think the way I'm seeing Jody think through these topics is you're able to say, wait, let's level set on definitions, let's level set on expectations, let's level set on perception, right? Which could fall into from expectations. And then let's talk about it. Because the whole aspect of privacy and comparing it to what's acceptable for us already today, um, and comparing it to the analogy that you use when you're locked in a room, who would you rather watch you, is really interesting thought. And I think that I think also, I think there is some aspects of generational influence that will be much more accepting of this. I mean, when I go through an airport in Atlanta, I sign up for the Face ID thing or whatever it is, digital ID, and I'm passing like 40 people in line. And I'm thinking in my head, what's the worst they're going to do with it? They probably already have my data anyways, right? So I'm probably going to be compromised regardless. But it's the, it is knowing, to your point, like what could they do with that? Who has that? Well, what's the risk associated to it? But what am I getting on the upside? Not only just as a user, right? It was a user perspective, but also from a business perspective. When I have these tools, like for example, saving on storage, if I have the technology helping me understand the most important parts of the video, there's no reason to have all this storage anymore. And so I think that I appreciate all the ways that you narrow that very complicated topics around to a simplistic way of thinking. So, Jody, so we're at that time of the podcast. Tell the audience something you're working on that you're excited about, and also where they can find you.
Right now, the most exciting thing that I'm working on is computer vision intelligence, revolutionizing physical security with the application of computer vision intelligence. I work at Ambient.ai, and we're on a mission to prevent every security incident possible. And I encourage everyone to Google or jump on LinkedIn or ask your friend about Ambient.ai, Ambient.ai, because it really is the future, not only of video surveillance, but of physical security and really operational intelligence altogether. There's a lot of really, really smart young people working on this mission, and a lot of professionals in the physical security industry are starting to take notice and are starting to ask questions and see if maybe they can get involved. And it's just a really exciting time, really exciting product, really exciting company. You can find me at LinkedIn. That's probably the best way. Jody, Jody, Russell, Russell. And I am happy at any point to sit down, continue this conversation, talk more about other aspects of physical security. I got a lot of funny stories about Don that I can share with you if you buy me a beer, and we'll go from there.